Why do we eat kosher? Okay, that's a fantastic question. It's a very good question. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the question is really even bigger than that. The question is, why do we even do mitzvot? Why? What does Hashem really need us to do mitzvot? Like any mitzvah. You could ask the same question about Shabbat. You could ask the same question about Taharat Mishpacha. You could ask the same question about really anything. Why do we do anything? Because the answer to all of them is the same. The answer is, the basic, shortest possible answer is at the end of Pirkei Avot, the last chapter, which says, because Hashem said so. That's really the reason. That's it. That's the real reason. Now, there's more details to that, though. There's more details to that. The real reason is what I just said. Because if Hashem is God, that means He's the king. The king doesn't have to explain Himself to us. Now, if you go, for example, if you have a government, a democratic government, people vote, they can vote the guy in, they can vote the guy out, meaning that people have a say. But once the guy is already in, he doesn't have to answer to everything. Why? Because that's the point of being in power, let's say a president. But if it's a king, if let's say there's certain countries still in Africa and different parts of the world that still have kings. Kings don't have votes. They become king because of their lineage, because of who their father is. And once they become king, that's it. You can't say, oh, I don't like you anymore. You killed my cousin. That was really a nice guy because he did something bad. You can't do that. Why? Once the king is the king, there's no more questions and answers. He can answer if he wants, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't owe anybody any what we call din v'cheshbon, any accounting for anything that he does. Because that's the point of being a king. And that's the king of flesh and blood. Now the king of kings, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even more so. He is perfect. He actually doesn't even need us. With or without us, He's perfect. The only reason why He created us is because He is the ultimate, the epitome of good. And good is defined by something that does good. You can't say, I'm a good person if you hurt everybody you meet. You can't say, I'm a good person if all you do is bad. You can't say, I'm a good person if you're a very selfish person and the only thing that you do good is to yourself. That's not a good person. Good person is somebody that does good for others. That's what defines good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the epitome of good. He's the ultimate good. And therefore, He decided to create us in order to give us good. But at the same token, because of His wisdom, He knew that to just give us good without the opposite would make no sense. Because then, the whole world would have no purpose. We wouldn't know what's the difference between good and something else. So He had to give us a world where we have both options, good and bad. So the good He wants to give us according to, if we follow a set of rules that He created. Bad He gives us is if we violate those rules. Why? Because even though us violating the rules doesn't change His status, He's still the king, He's still perfect, He's still everything. By us violating the rules, we put Him in a situation where He is now forbidden by His own rules to give us good. So the only reason why He created us is because He wants to give us good. By us doing something bad, we in essence stop Him from doing what He really wants to do. So that's the punishment is not necessarily for the sin itself or for us doing something against Him. It's for us going against the rule book because now He can't fulfill His will. And His will is to give us good. He can't give us good if we're constantly doing stuff that's bad. So with all of that being said, He gave us specific rules. For example, He wanted us to feel a little bit like Him, how He felt on the 7th day of the week by Him stopping creating. He created the world in 6 days and He stopped creating on the 7th. He said, you cannot, as a human being, you can't create anything. You can innovate, but you can't create. We, as human beings, cannot create something out of nothing. We can innovate something that already exists. So a human baby, for example, doesn't come from nothing. There's a seed and there's an egg. So even all of these scientists that tell you, oh yeah, but we got a little sheep from a test tube and it came from nothing. Yeah, but that sheep came from a seed and an egg. It didn't come from nothing. Same thing with anything else in the world. Nobody created the phone automatically. Those first person discovered electricity. Then he discovered how to minimize and put electricity in a small little battery. And then he discovered how to actually take that energy and put it into something else, and so on and so forth. So the point is that we took everything that existed and we innovated. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, He creates. He's the only one that can create from nothing. He created for 6 days, but on the 7th day he stopped creating because he wanted us to have something in common with him as his children. Because we could also stop creating. Technically we can't create, but we could in essence feel like we are not trying to create even. So therefore he started Shabbat. He said Shabbat is a day that you don't create and I don't create. Therefore you're going to feel like mamash, my son or my daughter. Now when we violate Shabbat, we drive on Shabbat, we play our phone on Shabbat, we go on a computer on Shabbat, we light fire on Shabbat. In essence, we are creating something. Even though it's innovation, we're creating something that didn't exist before. We're innovating something. Let's say, for example, the coal that's there, and then we take a match to it and we light fire. Now, even though the fire is not a new creation, in essence, we've gave birth to something new. HaShem says you are defeating the purpose of the creation because I created this whole Shabbat just for you. I didn't create it for me. I created it for you. But you violating it, you're going against the entire purpose of creation. Same concept when it comes to kosher. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to us, I want you to understand that everything that you're going to eat, whether it's ice cream, or it's a donkey, or it's a kosher hamburger, or it's candy, everything that you eat is going to have one of two options. One, it'll turn into blood. Two, it'll turn into waste. Those are the only two options. I mean, technically you can throw it out before it goes anywhere, but that's not really a real option. So, once something goes into your digestive system, doesn't matter what it is. If it's a steak, if it's ice cream, if it's candy, if it's apple, everything turns to blood. Whatever doesn't turn to blood turns into waste. So in essence, you are what you eat. That's not really, it's a real statement. You are really what you eat because the blood is really you. If somebody, Chas v'shalom, has the blood removed out of their body, they can no longer live because the blood has part of the soul in it. So in essence, everything that you eat becomes you. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want you to be as close to me as possible, which means that you have to take care of this neshama that you have, this soul that you have. You have to keep it pure. The only way to do that is by eating things that are pure, things that are within the guidelines that I gave you, within the rule book that I gave you. If you eat something pure, then it'll turn into pure blood. If you eat something impure, then it'll turn into impure blood. Now by vision, you can't tell. Why? Because we don't have the ability to see it. We just see blood. We just see red. You can't even, with the naked eye, you can't even see white blood cells. Even though we know they're white blood cells, we can't see white. There's no like white blood somewhere in your body. We just see blood. Even though we know it's white blood cells and you need them because if you don't have them, you can't fight disease. Still, it all looks red. So with our eyes, we're limited. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not limited. So he says that blood, if it came from pork, if it came from a cheeseburger, if it came from a trefa, some type of non-kosher animal, that blood is impure. You've impurified your neshama. And he says, "V'nitmetem bam." You became impure because of it. And the hint of what it causes to us, that we can see other than a sin against Hashem, is the sages say, "V'nitmetem bam," and you became impurified by it. Also says, "V'nitamtem bam." You became stupefied. You became spiritually stupid as a result of eating non-kosher food. What does spiritually stupid mean? It doesn't mean that you can't build buildings. You can build buildings. There's no problem. It has nothing to do with spirituality. It doesn't mean that you can't fly a plane. You can. There's no problem. Plenty of people eat non-kosher and they fly planes with no problem. But what does it mean? It means that when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to Torah, you're going to have almost an impossible time understanding the deep meaning of what's being said. Why? Because the soul is impure. It has almost like a border or some type of a wall on it as a result of the food. So there's always going to be a pure part of it because that's chelek elo amimal. That's a part of Hashem. There's always a pure part of it. But the impurity causes some type of friction. What is it like? It's like, for example, if you, let's say, for example, you want to feel what your skin feels like. You just want to feel what your skin feels like. You want to see around you. You want to see maybe you got burned, maybe somebody bit you, something. You don't know what's going on. But you have a jacket. You have a jacket on like this. You have 3 layers on. you're not really going to feel what's happening. You're going to get a sense of it, that your finger is touching your arm, but you're not really going to know for sure what's really under the skin. Until when? Until the jacket goes off and the shirt goes off and so on. And once you touch skin to skin, that's when you're truly going to understand what actually happened here. Same concept goes with impure food. When you eat impure food, you could still listen to Shurei Torah and get a basic understanding of what's being said. But to truly accept it and to truly connect to it is impossible as long as you eat non-kosher food.